Hello, my name's Rob Edwards. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today we are once more talking Wheel of Time. Season 1 of the Wheel of Time, I'm going to be ranking my favourite episodes of the show. I am in my new filming location. As you can probably see, this is the bookcase. That's the window, casting a light on the bookcase. Oh, and I've just noticed there is a reflection of me in the bookcase glass. This is still a work in progress. The setup may change for next week, or it may not. Just a view of my books and role-playing games and my wife's books over here as well. My criteria for ranking these episodes, it's going to be a bit of a bundle and a mess, really. It's going to be a little bit about how I think it captured the spirit of the book, how it captured the events of the book, if it was creative, did I like the new direction it went, all sorts of bits and pieces, the effects, and it's all going to be a bit of a mess. So this is entirely subjective. There is very little objectivity to be on show in this video here, so feel free to completely disagree with me about everything. But I wanted to get something out today which I produce relatively quickly, relatively short video, so that there would be something this week, and I can get back to my proper, more epic making of videos next week, once everything's a bit more settled in the new place. Anyway, that's enough preamble. Let's get into it. We're starting with my least favourite episode of the show from season 1, and this is mostly in here in the rankings because of how much of a disappointment it was. It had the opportunity to really knock it out of the park. The book was a bit wonky at the end of The Eye of the World. It had a chance here to really swing for it and really give us something different but improved upon the book. And it just didn't happen. The section I did like was Rand and Moiraine at the Eye. I think that kind of worked. Maybe it makes a bit more sense than the whole chords from the book. Maybe. Your mileage may vary on that one. But all of the stuff around it didn't work. The mad kind of one-power defence of Tywin's Gap. The non-event of Perrin's confrontation with Padan Fain. All the sort of fake-out deaths. The breaking of law. All of this stuff didn't really work for me. There was stuff I liked in it. But really, my least favourite episode by a fair margin, this one. I kind of almost regret putting episode 5 quite as low as I did. Episode 5 is the step-in episode, essentially. And it is here not because I didn't think what we saw on screen was good, because I thought step-in storyline was actually quite interesting and well realised and gave us an insight into the Aes Sedai Warder bond, all of which is pretty cool. But it isn't in the book, and there is so much missing from the book that I'm kind of aggrieved that this episode is here taking the opportunity to put in more of the things that we saw from the book. My 6th ranking is Leave Taking, episode 1 of the show. Again, it's an episode which has stuff in it that I really enjoyed. I liked the realisation of the two rivers. Shame it's not called Emond's Field. I thought the sets here were great. And I love the realisation of Winter's Night, the battle of it. That wasn't in the books, but it was a creative, interesting way of showing it. I could have done without the sort of bright white light on Moiraine during her channeling, but I've talked about this at length already, so I'm not going to cover that ground again. Why is it so low in my rankings? Because it needed more space. It needed more time to actually delve into the background a bit more. We were so hurried out of the two rivers, and I just feel that we didn't really get much of an establishment of the status quo before events came along to overturn things for our friends from the two rivers. I liked quite a bit of what happened in this episode, but the pacing is what brings it right the way down for me. We're getting into episodes now which I thought were pretty solid on the whole. They're not my favourite, because that's how rankings work. But episode 2, Shadows Waiting, I like the whole Shadala Goth section in here, and it was quite interesting. I thought the continued flight from the Two Rivers, it kind of missed a little bit of, again, pacing. I would have liked to have seen Baerlon, but essentially we're into the episodes now, which generally I liked, and episode 2 just not as strong as some of the other ones further up the list. For example, episode 3, A Place of Safety. I really enjoyed all the stuff in Breen Springs. I enjoyed Dana as our one stand-in dark friend. I thought she was great. I love the introduction of Tom, and I thought the set design was great, with some introduction to the Aiel through the captured Aiel in the cage. I liked this episode. It felt quite in the spirit of the books, if not so much in the actual events. Now, I know that episode 6 is a bit controversial to put quite so high, but this is the Moiraine point of view episode. We get to see a lot more about her politicking in the Tower. We get to see her relationship within her Arger, within the Blue Arger. We get to see her fencing verbally with Liandrin some more, which is fun. We get the 2.5 trials with Lagain and the three sisters here. All of this stuff is cool. We get a very hurried healing of Matt, but again, some great lines around it. If you're going to call yourself wisdom, perhaps you should display some. One of my favourite lines in the entire show. Savage burn from Moiraine against Nynaeve. And it's strong. I say it's strong, and I did like a lot of what we saw here. For a while, I was absolutely convinced I was going to put this at number 1. The Dragon Reborn, I actually really liked the take on Lagain. I liked the moment at the end with Nynaeve discovering that she could channel. I didn't like all the fake-out deaths in that scene as well, and I don't like some of the stuff which is happening with the lore of way channeling works in this world, and how it's actually changing a little bit within this episode. And I thought the attack by the Dragon Sworn on the Aes Sedai camp was a little bit untidy, a little bit unclear. It could have been better realised. Interesting, by the way, episode 4, another episode which is very different from the established events in the books. Pretty much none of the stuff that we saw in Lagain's prison camp happens, and yet I actually really like it. Unlike what we saw with the step in episode 5. Which makes my favourite episode of season 1 something of a surprise even to me, if I'm honest. I have ranked episode 7, The Dark Along the Ways, as my favourite. And initially, I had this lower than The Dragon Reborn, because this whole sort of fake love triangle thing with Perrin, Rand and Egwene, I hate it. I don't want it in my show. I don't like it. That is the one thing the show has done which I absolutely detest. But having gotten over that, almost everything else in this episode I love. It isn't the episode I would want it to be because of the lack of Matt, of course, but putting that, because there wasn't much they could do about that, to one side, love the realisation of the ways. We didn't spend enough time there, but I loved it. I loved the introduction to Min and her ability to see the pattern. I thought Faldara was well realised. I really enjoyed the culmination, shall we say, of the Nynaeve-Lan relationship. How do you say this without it sounding filthy? It reached its climb? No. Came to a hey? No. Culmination is where I'm sticking on this. And even that sounds a bit filthy. But I liked that we had the two of them actually be together in this episode. And I think that was a really good thing. And I liked Rand coming to his realization that who he was and what that meant he had to do. All of this I really enjoyed. Again, not the way the book plays it at all, but I really, really liked it. I thought it was well realized, well done, and it was the best performance we had from Yosha the entire season, and that is why all of these things together, all these things which I loved about this episode, outweighing the horrible Perrin Egwene Rand triangle, puts it at my number one. And that's just to say, really, that, even my favourite episode of this season I had problems with, but even the worst of this season, there were things that I loved in it. Which is why, on balance, I am still very much in favour of this show. Thank you very much for joining me today. That's everything I've got to say. I will be back next week with a more weighty video, as I want to take a look forwards to season 2 and what I think might be involved in it. So if you're interested in that, I will catch you next time. Cheers.